Good evening. My name is Stacey Romulus, and tonight I'm going to be presenting to you my research topic, which will be comparisons of state and federal funding for public education. In the U.S., the government has a huge role in budget across states, whether it's at the state, local, and also federal level. So this paper will look into that as well as highlight showing the importance of accountability when it comes to spending and for funding of public services, including education. In some states, they use either a variety of state, local property taxes to pay for education. In some instances, for example, in New Jersey, they have high property taxes, and a lot of that money will help fund for schools. And they use a system to be able to track prior to the school year how much money is going to be needed to be spent, the student teacher ratio, and also looking into classroom sizes. So they have a system where in New Jersey, a lot of the school districts, they will have some idea, but that will give the state even better idea as far as tracking as how much will be needed for the school year. And in some cases, like Georgia, the state of Georgia, they have the same type of system where the counties will need to have some form of pull in their own resources, and the government and state government in Georgia will sort of add supplemental funding to that, but they have to show that they're pulling their weight as well and using that and same tracking system. And then in some states, there really isn't no clear idea as far as how to get the resources for public education. For example, in Hawaii, they actually have an operational budget, which is approved by the governor there. However, there isn't a very clear understanding of where the funds are going to, especially including for public education. And so a lot of officials and a lot of school districts are kind of just confused as to where their money is going, which also unfortunately puts Hawaii at a very low part of the list when it comes to education. So there really isn't any strong pull or monitoring where the money is actually going to and who's getting it and how it's getting. Somehow the money doesn't go where it's supposed to be, unfortunately, and that's in the case of Hawaii. You have some states like Ohio that pull in all the resources from state, local, federal funding to be able to pull into tapping into resources for public education. And in some states, they actually use some of the funding from a state lottery. For example, in Ohio and also in Florida, they use some of the funding from the lottery to help pay for schools. But a lot of times, it's not the major component. A lot of times, it's coming either from a state tax or local tax or even property taxes, and plus including federal funding. Federal funding is very interesting in that federal funding for schools, it really boils down coming from the U.S. Department of Education and also through Congress as well, setting up initiatives to create boundaries and parameters as far as how much funding they will give. And a lot of that will be based on documentation from the states and local government showing financial needs and assessing those needs for their school districts. And so a lot of schools will have to show documentation, some form of tracking system to show that the money is being used wisely, but then also show that they have a plan in action. So a lot of states have to do that. Many school districts have to engage in doing so. So that's where accountability comes into play. A lot of what we see out there, especially in the news when it comes to politics and money and funding and dealing with all the changes in the economy, there's a huge pull for accountability to show that money is being used correctly and that there is no chance of fraud or abuse of power, because a lot of that funding needs to be tracked, especially with the economy the way that it is right now. So it's very important that a lot of the states and local government have some form of system that there's some form of checks and balances, and that's where a lot of that comes into play. And a lot of the research that I have found has strongly suggested that there needs to be some form of understanding, acknowledgement of being transparent and honest. And a lot of that goes back to taxpayers and also local officials who want to see where their money is going and how things are being done correctly. Thank you.